Hello, my loves. Welcome into this Aries New Moon Act 2 Solar Eclipse Edition reading. This video is for you if this new moon in Aries is happening in your 11th house, meaning you're a Gemini Rising in the whole house system, or using another house system, 29 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries shows up in your 11th house. Welcome in. If you haven't already watched the introduction to this reading, I invite you to do that now. It is going to help you understand what it is that I'm talking about here. We're doing something a little bit different. I'm trying to teach a understanding that I've learned from like an 800-page book. So it's a little bit much, but it's the most important thing that I've studied and learned in my entire life. And I've been studying and learning the whole time. So I feel it's critical to share this information and content at this time, but you do need a little bit of backstory in order to understand it. And if you want to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, the person who put all these understandings together and found the scientific discovery that really led to this understanding, you can watch the interview that solves the human condition and saves the world, linked in the description, and will be popping up on YouTube when I've had time to add the links. So, 11th housers. This is a house of groups and deals with the area of our life that are about community, friendship, charity, wishes, and humanity. Woo! Big energy here. I love this house with this material. They go so well together. First, we're going to review the card that came through in Act 1 of these readings, and then we're going to apply it to the human condition and the 11th house. Here's your beautiful card. I love this card. Earth Angel. You are a light worker who has come to Earth to teach about love. Yes, you are. And in the context of the human condition, you are a light worker who came to Earth to teach about the human condition because it teaches love. It teaches compassion. It teaches understanding. So what the human condition says, to reiterate, is it's what Jeremy has discovered. He's a biologist, and he's discovered that the origin of our species, which was left up to another scientist to discover by Darwin, believe it or not, is altruistic and loving in nature. We had 10 million years of genetic adaptations that happened in an environment where there was no competition and there was plenty of food and resources available. And so when we come into life, we're still expecting that genetically. It's only been 2 million years, only I know is a relative term, but in comparison to 10 million years, it's only been 2 million years that we've had an experience that didn't match that genetic inheritance. And it really amped up about 10,000 years ago when agriculture became a thing and we started organizing in large groups. Once again, we were a large group to begin with, and then we kind of went away from the large group thing, and now we're coming back. But the upset that has been caused by the lack of nurturing and the lack of ideal nursery conditions we've been exposed to has contributed to what's called the human condition, has created what's called the human condition. It's a psychosis, soul illness, and neurosis, mind illness of the human species that has caused anger, alienation, upset, greed, competition, selfishness, which we've attributed to Darwin's survival of the fittest, just animalistic nature, and we've given our mind this task of, competing with our animal instincts, when in fact, our instinctual nature is loving and cooperative, and it's our intellect that has been not acting cooperatively and lovingly. Understandably so, though. So here's the resolution. Here's the information that brings compassion into the equation. The intellect developed from a nerve-based learning system. So the name of this game that we're playing is survive as a species. That's still true, right? Darwin had that right. We're all trying to survive as a species, and nature is selecting for qualities that allow us to develop and survive as a species. So genetic adaptation even when it's altruistically oriented, has limitations because it can only adapt to the environment through generational adaptation. It's slow in essence. What happens with nerve-based learning is we're able to compare past choices and things that have happened with future choices and things that might happen. And so this ability to compare and store memory has really invited us and allowed us to come to an intellectual understanding of what is right in a moment and what we can do in a moment to change the trajectory of our choices so that we can survive. The problem with this is that we had to go against our instinctual nature, our altruistic, compassionate, loving, cooperative natures in order to learn what works and what doesn't and why. So for 2 million years, we've been developing this intellectual adaptation that has necessarily led to conflict between the instinctual self, 10 million years of genetic adaptation that existed in the loving, nurturing environment, and the instinctual and the intellectual nerve-based learning, which has had to do trial and error for 2 million years and go against the instincts of our inheritance in order to understand and learn so that we can move forward as a species with quicker adaptation if we don't kill ourselves. Meaning as a species, right? If we don't reach terminal alienation and extinction as a species. That's the goal, is to not reach that. So you, Earth Angel, you're here to teach about love, and you're here to understand this material. If you're here with me right now, you have the capacity to understand what it is that I'm saying, and you're here to teach about it. You're here to share it. And so I explained the whole thing again. That's pretty much what I said in the introduction, I know. But I explained it again because I'm really working on getting you to understand, because this role is critical here. This is in your 11th house, the house of friendship, the house of community, the house of humanity. There's no more important placement for this information to come through. We all have important placements. We all have important aspects of our charts and our lives that are contributing to the survival of the human species. And recognize that this is a very important placement for you. This is a very important way that you are serving the collective at this time, humanity. This is in your humanity house that this solar eclipse is happening. And this is a big solar eclipse. I talked about it in the introduction. I won't reiterate it again, but it's huge. And so here's your time to teach about love. So how does the human condition and understanding it open our hearts to love? It helps us to understand couple of things. It helps to understand why we didn't get the love and nurturing that we expected in our upbringing, and to bring love to that, right? We've been a little upset about that in varying degrees because we've experienced varying degrees of unideal nursery conditions, right? Some of us experience extreme lack of nurturing and extreme hostile environments that they grew up in. Some of us experienced relatively decent environments, but still grew up in a world that wasn't acting cooperatively and lovingly, and have felt the pain of that and have been trying to deal with the pain of that from the beginning of time, or from the beginning of their experience of the non-ideal world. And so we can bring love and understanding to the world, understanding to why humanity is acting so crazy, so psychotic and neurotic, so competitive and greedy and selfish and uncooperative. Why has this been happening? Well, the intellect and instinct have been battling. And now with this understanding, we can bring love back into the equation. Intellect can understand that the instinct was just trying to guide us to, because it's oriented to altruism and doesn't know anything else. And the instinct can understand that the intellect has been trying to develop itself so that it can help us to adapt in quicker ways. And so there's deep compassion that can happen between the two sides. This is also the masculine energy and the feminine energy that we're talking about here. So there can be a reconciliation between the masculine and the feminine energies as well. And we can finally see the success of groups with this understanding. So I'm somebody who's been all about communal living and all about community projects and cooperation and collaboration for 7, 8 years now. And actually way more than that. I'm thinking back, I'm like, wait, it's been like 10, 12. And they've all failed, and I felt so discouraged by it. But that's because we didn't have this understanding. In group settings, if we don't have this understanding, we're going to be competing with each other. We're going to be trying to get validation from each other. We're going to be coping with the human condition in various ways that are going to trigger other people's copings. And it's going to all fall apart without this understanding, without this love. So when it comes to groups, because again, 11th house has to deal with groups, groups themselves are going to be more successful if everyone in the group has this understanding that our origin, that our natural state of being is to be cooperative and loving and selfless, and that we've been acting not that way towards our loved ones, in our groups, in our lives, in humanity in a larger sense, because we've been suffering from a psychosis and neurosis. If that psychosis and neurosis is healed with this understanding, which is possible, then groups are just going to be cooperatively, collaboratively, selflessly orienting so that we can survive as a species. And that is really relieving. So your role here is so big, is so beautiful. You are here to bring love and teach love. And I feel like this material is one of the most loving things we can share with each other, because it really allows a relief that has science as its backup, as its basis, and explains all of the unexplainable things that we haven't wanted to talk about, that we haven't wanted to look at. The elephant in the room is finally labeled, addressed, talked about, and it no longer is a huge elephant. It's like a baby elephant now, and we can just walk it out the door. So my purpose of my readings is always to guide you back to the wise instinctive knowing that exists within you. So you're going to know whether this content, this information resonates with you at this time, and be prepared for it to show up in your life more and more frequently, because humanity has to know this. This is a critical piece of information that has been suppressed since it was put together in 1987. Okay? So it's been a long time coming. The first book this guy wrote was in 1988. So this information, it's time for it to come out. So your role in this is whatever you choose it to be and whatever you're guided to share. And of course, we can't force this on people, because anything that's forced on people is what Jeremy calls pseudo-idealistic. And we won't get anywhere with that. We need the explanation, we need the truth, but we also need to come to it ourselves. We need to know that it's valuable. We need to see that it's valuable. It's not enough for me to tell you it's valuable. You have to feel it and know it in your heart. Okay. I'm rambling now. I am so impressed by this card. I love the beauty, the grace of this card. I feel that for you. I feel that in you. I see that in you, and I celebrate that in you, because however you're teaching about love, whether it's using this material or not, our communities and our groups and humanity really needs it. So thank you. Enjoy your solar eclipse. Let me know how this resonates. Let me know if you have questions. And as always, namaste. The universal light within me salutes and honors the universal light within you. Namaste.